Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on the time zone that you are in. Welcome to our webinar, Power BI Best Practices for Effective Storytelling. Thank you for joining, and we will be starting now. So, this is Dharmesh Koda. I'm the President and CTO of Advaya Solutions, and I'm joined by my Chief Subject Matter Expert in Business Analytics, Darren Lang, who is a Senior Director at Advaya Solution, and he is our expert in Power BI, who is going to present most of the content today. Talking about Advaya Solutions, we are gold partners of Microsoft in various areas. Our offering is basically we make technology work for your organization. Our focus being adoption. The idea that we bring it on the table is basically the technology is useful only when it is utilized in a proper and in an organized way. So with our focus on adoption, we provide these services to our customers, especially around project and portfolio management. We help organizations set up their PMO, create insights, help them train and run the project management best practices. We ensure that we integrate the various tools in a way that it gets properly utilized. Our other offerings include modern intranet, basically utilizing various capabilities of Office 365 and its tool base and its applications in a way that the whole digital transformation results in better optimization of business processes and ultimate benefit to the organization. With cloud adoption, we help and assist organizations to move to the cloud, whether those are productivity applications, including your emails, documents, and other productivity assets, or also basically helping your applications to move to the cloud. And finally, we assist organizations to adopt and utilize various business intelligence capabilities of Microsoft platform with the focus on not only on the data representation, but also on the data consolidation and data organization. So with that, we will talk about why we are here. Before I begin, I want to make sure that I clarify that this webinar is intended for folks who are or are planning to use Power BI for their reporting needs. We assume that you have some familiarity with Power BI or equivalent BI tools. To know more about Power BI basic features, I would encourage you guys to go to www.advaya.com/webinars to look at our previous webinars where we have covered basics and advanced capabilities of Power BI. And I would also encourage you to go to microsoft.com/Power BI or powerbi.com to get more information about Power BI. In the last few webinars, we talked about storytelling with data in Power BI. In this particular webinar, we are going to focus on how to best use those great features of Power BI. As a continuation from our previous webinar, we will talk about how effectively use different capabilities of Power BI and how not to overuse them. Modeling, monitoring, and analyzing your data is very important, and they are analytical skills. When it is time to tell a story, you need to think like a designer to get your point across with memorable and compelling graphics. Mastering design elements not only assist you in building a more articulate and persuasive case, but also helps visually understand and connect data through support for clear insights. It encourages people to share and use your reports. So in today's webinar, we are going to talk about different capabilities here. But I want to begin with my personal story here. I mean, I'm a geek. I'm a computer professional geek, and therein, as a geek, I typically tend to overuse a lot of things that I know. I mean, if I get exposed to a lot of feature sets and capabilities in Power BI, I would create a kind of a graph which probably includes lot of capabilities of Power BI. At the end, what it turns out to be is like, okay, though I'm presenting a lot of data elements in one graph or one visual, but I fail to express the story, or I fail to convince the reader of the graph or visualization to understand what data I want them to understand. So help me out, Darren, with the various best practices that you have experienced and you have kind of discovered and corrected over the period.
Yeah, thank you, Dharmesh, and welcome everybody on the call. I hope that you can find some value out of this, and of course, you can reach out to me, after the webinar if you have any questions. So, a couple of things that we're going to go through is just kind of some, first of all, some best practices with Power BI, and these best practices will help you design your report so that you can have a compelling report that will be used by others, which is what Dharmesh mentioned a minute ago. So first of all, you want to make sure that you kind of focus on clarity or embrace clarity so that you avoid a lot of formatting that is not really needed to achieve your data clarity. You want to avoid too much clutter or elements that draw too much focus or too little focus on what the story is that you're trying to tell. I think we all have examples of using PowerPoint, and we went crazy with some of the visualizations. And when you're trying to tell a data story, it's easy to get distracted if you put too much of those in there. The next item is be consistent with your colors and your fonts so that it helps the viewer to really see the connections between the different data visualizations. So you want to make sure that your lines are consistent, your fonts, the names and the colors are consistent across the entire dashboard. So that when you switch to another visualization or you're conveying some additional information from a different visualization, you can easily and visually connect those elements. And then also you want to support readability. So you don't want to put images in the background, shape and fills that are that are going to obscure the numbers in the text. Anything with a pattern is going to be bad. Also use font types and font sizes, and text orientations that are easy to read. Avoid the serif fonts. They have a tendency to be less readable on a display. And then you want to kind of achieve some sort of balance as well. So leave the right amount of white space between the different charts. Show the right number of data relationships per the chart. You want to try and keep those relationships under 6 per chart. So if you get too many relationships, it just gets confusing.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was talking about, like using various capabilities of Power BI and kind of making a cluster of lot of data elements in one visualization. That exactly represents how I will create data, create a graph on left hand side, and probably Darren, with your experience, we will be able to create something like on the right hand side, which is much more clearer and easy to use. I want to let the audience know that please feel free to submit your questions or your comments and feedbacks on the conversation side of our Skype window, so that we probably can address them during the webinar and towards the end of the webinar.
Yeah. Okay, so that's a couple of best practices. The next, let's jump into a few of the kind of tips for choosing the right visualizations based on the data. So a line chart visualization works best for displaying comparing trends over time. So a line chart shows correlations between the different categories and time values. So that's kind of the best use case for a line chart. A column chart visualization works best for comparing data values across the categories. So this kind of removes the time series aspect of it from the line chart. So you can also orient the bar chart either vertically or horizontally, depending on what the space is and what you have available to you. The combination chart is used to visualize data sets with measures that have different scales. To compare several lines and bars for data sets with significant different value ranges. Use multiple scales on the line. So you can see on this one we've got a scale on the left and we have a separate scale on the right. So these are best for comparing data sets with different access scales, like temperature and precipitation is the easy one to imagine. Right, you could show both of those on a single graph. Next we have a scatter chart. Scatter chart is good for comparing two kinds of numeric data when you want to segment or categorize one or both types. If you want to use quadrants or your data has 3 data series that each contain a set value, then a bubble chart works really well. So a scatter chart is useful for distinguishing outliers, correlations, and categorizations in 2 sets of data. So a bubble chart can plot points by relative size if you want to segment 3 sets of data, like category, source, and timeline. So that's really the best use of the scatter charts and bubble charts. For pie charts and donut charts, they're really great at displaying categories as a proportion of a whole. So they're best for comparing with just a few values. Obviously, if you get too many values in there, you're going to, the slices of the pie and the slices or the donut are going to be too small and they're just not going to be readable. So a few values are good. It's more effective when, it's more effective than a bar chart when you're comparing categories within a total, like a single chart in it. So if you have percentages of something that really works really well on a bar chart or a donut chart or a pie chart. With donut charts, you can rotate those slicers and pull out certain slices to focus on them. You can also change the size of the hole in the middle, so that if you're displaying some additional information in the middle, you can make those changes. Were there any questions that came up?
It seems a couple of folks were having some difficulty looking at our screen. If you are still facing the same difficulty, please rejoin the webinar. I hope it solves the problem.
Okay. So those are some tips on setting up your report, some some tips on some visualizations, some really common visualizations. And so now I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking about the story itself. And so when you jump into a story, obviously you want to tell the story at the right level of detail so that it helps you convince others. So you want to make sure that you have the visualizations and the data, different data sources that really help you articulate that story completely. Obviously, like I said, you can pull in multiple data sources. So combining those sources will help help your executives or reviewers of your report to see multiple see those multiple sources in a single lens or through a single report. and that really helps them, to answer those kind of questions like, why did this happen, or is there something that can be done to improve the situation? Answering those questions are really, a key aspect of that storytelling. Another feature, and I'll show this during the demo, is being able to ask questions of the data right there in your report. So you can pull up the natural language question tool, and this is a great feature inside of Power BI that, like I said, is really impressive during a presentation if you can pull it up and just start asking questions of the data. The data visualization and storytelling can, obviously distill, millions of rows of data into a single compelling story, and it can really drive action. So you want to make sure that you use the combination of visualizations and filters to help you really navigate through that data so that you can, tell the story that is, that you've discovered or that insightful data. But yeah, filters, a lot of visualizations with filters and metrics and graphs and map charts. Really all of that really helps you understand that data story at a much deeper level. A couple of features that I just want to talk a little bit about for telling that story. The first one is creating the bookmarks. So bookmarks, really help, capture the current configuration view of a report page. So if you're setting up a page and it has a lot of different possible filtering, you can save your filter configuration with using a bookmark. And that makes it fantastic for you to reference it later, so that you're not having to kind of fumble through, all the different filters while people are sitting there waiting for you. You can just choose a bookmark and go straight to it. So you can also use, yeah, go ahead, Dharmesh.
Yeah, that's one of the features that I tend to use a lot, not in a negative way, but in a really good way. Because many a times when I'm presenting a story to any of my consumer or any of my managers and executives, it makes it easier if I have the ready-made like click off button kind of show visualization, like that's the story point that I want to highlight. So I pre-filter all my anomalies and the data point that I want to highlight, and it kind of shows up right away, instead of like I'm going there and going across various slicers and filters on the fly. I have a ready-made setting available.
Yeah, no, it really is. And now you can also use bookmarks as a form of navigation from kind of one page to other pages that give the report a app-like experience. So in this particular slide, you can see the little bookmarks next to each of the insights, and when you click on those, it's going to reveal something different. So it's a great way to use for navigation or to use for a conclusion of your data story as well. The other great feature is Drilldown. Drilldown allows you to look at the data in a different levels, to reveal that additional information. So by enabling the drill down up in the upper right corner, when I click on 2016, right, it's going to drill down into that list of hotels that I have as my drill down value, and then I can, of course, drill back up. And I'll show you this a little bit as well in the demo. But drill down is a great way to kind of show different levels of detail. Also, we have a drill through. You can create a page in your report that focuses on a set of visualizations. So suppose while you're reviewing the sentiment by location, you want to see top rated hotels in Atlanta by sentiment and rating. For that, all you need to do is right click on the bar chart and choose the drill down page that takes you to the top hotels by sentiment and rating, and then it shows you that page already configured for Atlanta, and you can see those top hotels in the Atlanta area. So this is a great feature as well. We spent a lot of time talking about the drill down and drill through features in the previous webinar. So yeah, absolutely. If you have any questions about that, it's really easy to configure that drill through page so that when you click on that bar chart, it's showing that for you. And then, of course, as I mentioned to you earlier, you can use bookmarks and buttons as kind of a navigation page. You can see here we have a list of bookmarks next to a set of like navigation pages that you can click on that take you to those various pages. And then you can click the back page to get back to this, kind of landing page. So this is pretty cool as well. So with that, how about if we just jump right into a demo of some of these features? That's probably what everybody's been waiting for anyhow.
And again, I want to remind people, please feel free to post your questions in the conversation tab. We will be addressing them throughout the demo and towards the end of the webinar.
Yeah. So we talked earlier about being consistent on your coloring, and you can see here my pie chart is different colors and as the table of data. And so really all I need to do is go in there. I can, under this paintbrush formatting icon, there's a bunch of different options. And I can, just choose the data colors that go along. So you can see that APAC in that pie chart is a green color. So I can just go in there and choose the green color that goes along with it. And that way I could have my bar charts and my pie charts have a consistent color. And that just makes it a lot easier. Also, you can almost use a legend that goes across both of those. Makes it a lot easier and saves yourself a little bit of space. For supporting readability, you want to make sure that you're using consistent fonts and you're not using background images that kind of obscure the data labels behind it or other line information. Sometimes that gets confusing. You want to try and avoid using all caps and bolds and all that kind of stuff. It just becomes a little bit unusable, unreadable. Again, use fonts that are easy to read when you're doing your presentation. We can see here, on this bar graph, notice that this data label is difficult to read. So what you can do is go in there again on this formatting, and when we go into our, different configuration items, it's easy enough for you to, check through some of these. What will happen is you'll get to one of them that has, a value an ending value. I would encourage you all to kind of explore underneath this formatting. There's a lot of different options for this. Try not to get too carried away. It's easy to do that. But for this one, so that I can see my 58,000 value, I can just specify my ending value. Let's say it's 65,000. And so when I put in that value, it increases the y-axis a little bit so that I can see all of my data labels, just to make it a lot easier to review. Of course, I'm also using consistent font size and font types and all that across the different visualizations. Also, you want to look at achieving balance. This we talked about in the slides. When we start putting too much onto a single visualization, it just becomes crowded and difficult to read. And one thing that you'll notice is that while these are the data labels kind of scale with the size of the visualization, it still becomes just awfully difficult to read, and it's a lot easier to make two separate visualizations. This particular visualization, which is the line and cluster column chart, allows you to configure each one of these visualizations either with or without those line values or column values. So you get to choose. So it's really easy to make a copy and paste of the visualization and just remove either the line or the column values. You can see on this one there are no column values, whereas on this one there's no line values.
Yeah, there was a question about this graph visualization, and we will share this particular graph with you. But that's how we have achieved the kind of visualization that you were looking for, having the line graph and the value superimposed over there.
Yeah, there are good reasons to have both a line on the bar graph, and with many of these you can add analytics. If we converted this to a different, like just to a line graph, then we have kind of analytics that we can perform on that line graph as well. Yeah, I'm happy to show this to you, if you'd like. But that's a pretty interesting way as well to configure your report. But again, like I said, if you put too much, if you put too, bars and lines and multiple lines together, it just becomes, too difficult to, show any of these analytics. Also, you want to put information in a visualization that helps you reveal the truth about the data. You can see that these two pie charts are using almost time series data. This is for March and this is for April, and you can see that there's a little bit difference between between March and April. But this is difficult to analyze, so really it's best to put this into a line graph that allows you to kind of see that data. And that's really what we mean by, kind of pursuing truth in the data. You want to use visualizations that really reveal the story that your data is trying to tell as well. And then also you want to make sure that you have the a combination of the visualizations that are really going to drive action within your organization. You can put these visualizations together. Obviously, you want to try and line up these visualizations. You can see that this visualization isn't lined up to this one. One really nice feature is under view on the navigation, there's an option to snap objects to grid, and when I do that, you can see it kind of snaps over, and it is a lot easier for you to get these lined up. You can also show the grid lines if you want. Sometimes that's helpful as well to get things lined up properly and looking good. But all of that is really important, and it really is something that is going to make your reports look much better. You can also put images behind it. You can put shading behind each of these visualizations to create kind of pseudo grouping between the visualizations as well. So that there's really quite a bit that you can do with the visualizations. But try and focus on not trying to cram everything onto a single report. I always try and convince customers that they should have purpose-driven reports, and that way that they're really focused in on very specific purpose for the report. And then you can add these visualizations to your dashboard in Power BI Online. And then finally, we have Q&A. Q&A is a feature that was added just recently to the desktop. It's been available in the service for quite a while. What you need to do so that you can see your Q&A feature is under Options, under File, Options, and Settings, there's the Options. And in this Options list, there is, or in the Settings list, there's something called Preview Features. And there's a QA option here that you'll need to check. Once you check that, you have to restart your Power BI desktop client. But once you do that, then you'll have this little button right up here. So you can either click on that button, or you can double click on the visualization, and you can just ask a question. So I can say sales, and it's going to kind of fill in for you by, right, I need a space in there. So I'm just starting to type in it, and it's going to do a smart lookup and tell you what values are available, and I can say I can use this. I can also say by status, or other values that I want to include. And so I can just add these kind of these questions of the data, and that makes it really easy. If you're not really familiar with the data, then you can create these visualizations. Of course, for this particular one, we can see. And we can make it bigger so that we can see the data. We have some data that is quite large, right? And this would be an example. Maybe you want a combination bar chart, line chart, because these, this it looks like a sales value for APAC is so much bigger than some of these other ones. But it's an example of how you can do Q&A. Inside of your report. And if you're sitting in front of an executive and they say, yeah, what about, this other piece of data, what's going on with it, for you to be able to just click on the report and ask that question right inside of the report is really pretty powerful, and it's pretty eye-opening for any users.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we can probably create a lot of visualizations and a lot of reports as we can imagine, but in most of the meetings where I'm like sitting with high profile people, they will throw in something which I have not created. So this feature actually gives me a quick way of creating a quick visualization in front of the audience without like any hassle or any difficulty.
Yeah. So, and it makes it easy so you don't have to sit there and drill into the data and find out what's going on with each one of the tables and how the tables are related and everything. Even though there are easy tools for doing that in the desktop version, it just makes it so you don't have to do that with Q&A. So we have here's a couple of tables, and I can click through them and see the information, or I can just ask that question right in the report, right? So, there's no relationship between those. No wonder.
And Darren, I see this theme feature. You can like quickly talk about that.
Yeah. So if your organization has some brand guidelines, then creating a theme and applying that theme to your reports is a great way to make sure that your reports are consistent with that brand guidelines. And so there's some really great tutorials and on how to create new themes, and then of course you can import them and start using them. So right now, if I look at this visualization and I look at the data colors, I can see all the different colors that are being used. And I can certainly change these, which is fine. However, if I have those brand guidelines and I create a theme and apply that theme, then these colors that are going to be available are going to be available based on your brand guidelines. So it really does make it much better to import that.
Great. Well, this can give us some consistency and some unified way of looking at things.
Yeah. Now there are many more features with Power BI. I only have 40 minutes, and it looks like 45 minutes, and it looks like I have about 5 minutes left for questions. So I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody has. I see that Swapna is also answering many of those questions. But if you have any questions, I can we can answer them here. Swapna, were there any questions that maybe came up that we'd like to discuss?
Not much, Darren.
Yeah,
Okay.
and we'll take Doug's question separately, and we'll talk to him. And same way, please feel free to ask your questions in the conversation tab.
Yeah, and then of course we are also offering a 1 hour of free Power BI briefing. So if you fill out this survey, you can either scan this QR code or you can go to this link here. And if you go there and fill it out, we just ask you a few questions about kind of what you would like to see in the future from webinars. I think that's probably the most important question. But then we'll sit with you. I'll give you a call and I'll help you with whatever kind of Power BI questions that you have. I can answer those difficult questions like why is Power BI better than Excel? So I'm happy to answer those questions for you.
We just received that from Dove, in case if you would like to.
Yes, I see that. Did we have any other questions?
Yeah, so as I said, there are lots of visualizations. There are a lot of additional visualizations available from third party as well. It is always best to understand the data concept and understand the data model behind the scenes, along with what kind of insight and what kind of understanding the audience would like to have about that particular report. Keeping all of those things in mind, design and visualize like what will be the best way of representing that data element. It doesn't mean that since all of these charting capabilities are available and we should use all the charting capabilities in our reporting. It's the best thing is basically to use one of those best visualization that will be representing your data in the best possible way. So instead of cluttering ourselves with a lot of visualization as I used to do, I basically now proponent of much more simplicity and easy to consume data visualization techniques.
Yeah. Yeah, so we'll follow up with everybody if they have any kind of questions. I'm happy to kind of work through that. It looks like there might have been a couple of questions. There was a question from Andrea about formatting, and Power BI just recently supports conditional formatting. I know that this is a new feature within I want to say 2 months. So 2 months ago, they released a version of desktop that does allow you to do, conditional formatting in the tables. So it is very comparable. Depending on what you're doing with those tables, I can think of it in Excel. There are some kind of navigational, data selection. Almost like filtering in Excel that is a little bit different in Power BI. But all of those filtering capabilities that we kind of talked about actually is a lot more powerful in Power BI. So while it is a little bit different, I would say that Power BI and data selection and filtering and conditional formatting is very, very comparable.
Yeah.
I see that there's a question from Tim about DAX. And I would say that it is not critical for you to be a master at DAX. There are just a tremendous amount of DAX explanations online, and there's a lot of DAX assistance. There are some great videos on DAX, and then of course there's partners like myself that are happy to help you if you run into some troubles with DAX. But DAX is very similar to the formulas that you would put into an Excel file or an Excel cell. So you could it's going to be very similar when you do more complex DAX formulas. Of course, that's almost like a Excel macro or something, but you don't have to be an expert in it. For Christina, she asked a question about Tableau Public. There is a Power BI online service that you can use. It does have a free version of Power BI Online. You can sign up with your organizational email address. And then, of course, there's licenses, very, very inexpensive licenses for Power BI Online Pro. I don't know. I think it's somewhere between $8 and $10 per user, so it's pretty reasonable. And then, of course, they have other license levels that allows an enterprise to purchase an enterprise level license. They can do that as well. Let's see. I hope that answered your question, Christina. If there was something specific about the Tableau Public that you were wondering about, reach out to me and I can help you with that. Okay, with that, I think we've kind of wrapped up our time. And I just want to iterate that we are doing, many of these Power BI webinars. We're trying to make it so that they're kind of actionable and has useful information, and it's not all a sales pitch. But we hope that we can provide you with the information that you need so that you can be really effective with your Power BI use. And of course, we're available if you decide that you need some additional assistance. And we're happy to give you like I said, a free hour of our time. If you run into any issues with Power BI, just by filling out that survey. So I really thank everyone for attending today, and good luck with your Power BI reporting and sharing. And we'll be in touch for the next webinar.
Thank you very much.